Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. My name is Artem, and here is the news. For 486 days, Ukraine defends itself against the forces of the Russian invasion. Yesterday, Wagner Group mercenaries tried to conduct a military coup in Russia under the pretext that forces of the Russian Ministry of Defense launched a missile strike on their rear camps, reports Ukrainska Pravda. Wagner forces managed to take under control several Russian cities, and according to some reports, they were 400 kilometers away from Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin declared them and their leader Yevgeny Prigozhin traitors. After a day of confrontation between Wagner troops and forces loyal to Putin and the Russian Defense Ministry, Prigozhin came to terms with Russian authorities via mediation of Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko. Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov said that the criminal case against Wagner Group leader Prigozhin will be closed and he will go to Belarus. The Russian authorities will not prosecute Wagner Group fighters who took part in the rebellion in consideration of their frontline contributions. Some of the Wagner fighters who initially refused to participate in Prigozhin's campaign will sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense. Peskov also said that Moscow is highly appreciative of the mediation efforts of Alexander Lukashenko. Lukashenko put himself forward as a negotiator since he has known Prigozhin for over 20 years. Peskov stated that the situation with the mutiny will have no effect on the course of the Russian war against Ukraine. The press secretary also insisted that Putin supposedly kept on working in the Kremlin all day, even though Ukrainian military claimed that he urgently left Moscow. In his evening video address, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said that yesterday the world saw that the bosses of Russia do not control anything. Complete chaos, complete absence of any predictability, and it is happening on Russian territory, which is fully loaded with weapons, stressed Ukraine's leader. He pointed out that in one day Russian authorities lost several of their million-plus cities and showed all Russian bandits, mercenaries, oligarchs, and everyone else how easy it is to capture Russian cities, and probably arsenals with weapons. We all know the solution. First, the world should not be afraid. We know that only our unity protects us. Ukraine will definitely be able to protect Europe from any Russian forces, and it doesn't matter who commands them, we will protect. The security of Europe's eastern flank depends only on our defense. And that is why every manifestation of support for our defense is support for your defense, everyone in the free world, reminded the President of Ukraine. Zelensky said that now it is time to provide all the weapons necessary for Ukraine's defense. We would really appreciate if you could rate us in the apps where you're listening to this podcast: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and others. This really helps more people to find out about Highlights from Ukraine podcast and truth about Russia's invasion. Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar informed that Ukraine's forces started advancing on several fronts simultaneously in eastern Ukraine, reports Suspilne. In particular, they are advancing on Orikhovo-Vasylivka, Bakhmut, Bogdanivka, Yagidne, Klishchivka, and Kurdyumivka. On all fronts, Ukrainian troops are making gains. Maliar also said that Russian forces attempted to advance on the Kupiansk, Liman, and Marinka fronts, but were not able to capture new positions. On the Avdiivka and Shakhtarsk fronts, the Russians conducted airstrikes and deployed artillery. Heavy fighting continues on all fronts in southern Ukraine. According to the Front Press Center, in particular, Ukrainian troops managed to capture enemy positions near Krasnohorivka, which is close to Donetsk. Those positions were under Russian control since 2014. Commander of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade Andriy Beletsky also informed that Ukrainian forces pushed back Russians from the western bank of Siversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal, reports NVUA. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We are a commercial initiative of just two people, and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.